Okay, everyone, BJ Weiler here once again with another fantastically stupendous, marvelous episode of Awesome Sauce for Games. This is episode 9, and we will, I guess in this episode we will be continuing our versus type of theme we've had for a couple of episodes, the VS somehow versus last episode we did hardcore versus casual. We had one other episode with versus free to play versus subs. Well, this one is going to be theme parks versus sandboxes. Which is better? Is there one better? What are they? If you don't know what they are, well, we'll be getting into that in a little bit in this episode. But first, a bit of an update on an up-and-coming game that is currently in development called Venus Rising. A few episodes ago, if you have not seen it, go ahead and check it out. I forget which episode number particularly, but it has Venus Rising on the YouTube channel, title, so you can check that out. Venus Rising is an up-and-coming MMO in development by Alex Allen and a small close-knit crew of developers. Alex, having come from Star Wars Galaxies, as I mentioned in that episode on Venus Rising, is an adult-oriented MMO set in the Roman type time period. So it has Roman themes, that kind of stuff. And one of the main features of Venus Rising will be the ability to have sexual interactions with your player characters, just like they did back in the Roman times. So the theme sort of fits very nicely. As I had mentioned in that episode a few months ago, the original game plan for Venus Rising was to have a closed alpha in which to debut some of the game, and of course, as an alpha is, for testing features and getting player feedback on the features, the gameplay elements, what works, what doesn't work, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, according to Alex, she recently posted on the forums a few days ago that they've had some issues with some animations, and they're trying to work through the code with that to try to get the animations to work. But according to what she said, it looks like they may have to scrap that particular bit of code and just start from scratch. Now, I'm not a coder, but I do have some experience with computers and technology and that kind of stuff. So I know how time-consuming and aggravating some of this stuff can be, and some of these problems that can pop up unexpectedly. So, unfortunately, the alpha has been delayed at this point. There is no set date at this point because, again, they probably, from what it sounds like, they're just going to scrap a bunch of that code and start from scratch instead of trying to force what they want into the current code. Just going to start with a fresh slate, which in the end will make it easier to get what they want and to make the game all the much better. So it's sort of a disappointment that we can't bring an episode of Awesome Sauce that updates you on the game development as I was hoping, but it's good that they're not trying to force stuff into the code, and as a result probably have a weaker game because of it. So as always, stay tuned. As soon as we have some more information about the alpha, or when the alpha starts, we will certainly do an Awesome Sauce episode that updates you on the development of the game, how it looks and that kind of stuff. So I got to leave a message with Alex and just let her know, hey, if you can give me some information, I'll pass it on to you, and hopefully I can work it out where I can get some alpha gameplay footage at some point too in the future. So we probably won't be able to look forward to anything like that until probably early next year, late winter, early spring, February, March at this point. Hopefully earlier, but we'll see how it goes once they work out their issues with the coding. But that being said, we'll take a little bit of a jump cut here and then dig into our theme for today: theme parks versus the Sandbox. Alrighty. Theme parks and Sandbox. Well, what are they? If you don't know, well, let me explain it to you. A theme park and a sandbox, generally speaking, is just an overall design theme for a game. And as you can imagine, they are very different from each other just based on the names. And of course, what is a sandbox? What is a theme park? Well, as you may imagine, a sandbox essentially is a game in which the developer gives you a world to play in, just like your sandbox in the backyard or at the park or whatever. They provide you with the sand, with the world in which the sand resides, and they give you the tools, your molds, your shovel, your little shifter, whatever toys you might use in a sandbox. Essentially, in a game, those are your tools in order for you to be able, the player, to be able to create content for the game, essentially. Now, it's not sort of creating content as in developing art assets and that kind of stuff, but it's more or less creating player generated interactions, sort of like crafting, or player housing. You have, in most games, your player housing is instanced. A big Sandpark game, which was Star Wars Galaxies, actually had open world housing, but essentially you go into your housing and you decorate your house. Depending on what it is, like with Rift Dimensions, you can actually build all sorts of stuff. So that's very Sandparky, very player-generated content, sort of like SimCity or Stronghold, the Firefly series. In fact, we have a couple episodes of It's All in the Wrist, our first two episodes, after we did some changes on the YouTube channel, of It's All in the Wrist as Stronghold. It's basically a building game. You take what the developer gives you, the tools, the assets, and you just create stuff within the game. You can create your own scenarios sometimes, but generally you're building in the world, be it player housing, or you're going out and you don't have any hand-holding. There may be missions, there may be things to accomplish in the game, but you as a player sort of have to figure that out, how to do it in a sandbox type of game. The most popular current one right now is EVE Online. They've been around for almost a decade now, I think, if not longer. I think it's about a decade. And they have about 500,000 subs at this point in time. So basically, that's what a sandbox is. It's basically left up. The developer gives you the world, gives you the tools, and that kind of stuff. May have some, you may have some overall theme of quests, of some character progression, but it's basically left into the player's hands to determine how they will interact and progress within the game. A theme park, as you might imagine, is basically the polar opposite. The developer gives you everything. They create the rides, they create the attractions, and you're basically bouncing from one to the other. So essentially, your quests, your missions, everything's developed. A little bit more hand-holding. You're guided from one to the other. Of course, you may have some sandbox-type element things, again, like crafting or like player housing in some of these. But generally speaking, you're basically consuming content. You hop in, you do a couple of quests, you can hop out. And that's the attraction with theme parks, and why they tend to be a little bit more popular than, say, your sandbox, where a theme park will get millions of subscribers, a la WoW, and a theme park, or sandbox rather, the best sandbox game right now has only 500,000. So if you take the top 3 MMOs, 2 of them are theme parks, one of them is a sandbox. Of course, the top one, WoW, is a theme park game with millions upon millions of subscribers. And the next 2, EVE and Star Wars The Old Republic. EVE being the sandbox game, Star Wars The Old Republic being the theme park game. They both have about the same amount of subscribers at this point. But of course, with Star Wars The Old Republic being freemium, they have ton more people just playing the game, either as a free-to-play player or as a preferred player. So for number of player-wise, you have WoW, you have Star Wars The Old Republic, then you have EVE, essentially, if you're going subscriber base. Of course, there's a lot of other games out there that have a lot more people playing it, but just basically in those sort of general terms. So which is better? Well, quite frankly, it just depends on you as a player. Just like the free to play versus subscription based model, just like the hardcore versus casual base type play style, it's really what you prefer to get out of a game as a player. One is not better than the other. However, of course, as we can see with the examples that we have out there, and of course taking in consideration the hardcore versus casual type of argument, I see theme parks will always probably always be the more popular of the two type of game designs, simply because it is easier for the casual player to jump into and understand and play a theme park game as opposed to a sandbox game, which is really more player generated interactions, player oriented type of content, which doesn't necessarily appeal to the casual player unless it's a type of game like you have SimCity or Stronghold, which are, again, generally single player games, the new crap-tastic SimCity being the exception, of course, which, of course, their multiplayer elements haven't worked since launch, and, well, Episode 1 dealt with that. Episode 1 of Awesome Sauce dealt with that whole fiasco. So, is it better then for developers to make a theme park game? Well, if you're a developer looking to make a AAA game, yes, it is probably better to have your overall game design be a theme park. The drawback, however, the big drawback, as we have seen, especially with MMOs, as we have seen with theme park games, is that it is very easy to consume all the provided content very quickly. So pretty much every MMO that has come out in the last few years has been mainly a theme park MMO, and if they've had subscriptions, without exception, they've all gone free to play at this point, just because they have not been able to keep the subscriber base that they were hoping to get. And why is that? Is, well, because, well, so, a lot of the different reasons, but not the least of which is being that some bad mechanics in some games and that kind of stuff. But overall, it's because players have been able to just burn through whatever content there was at launch, and players get bored because they burn through the content instead of taking their time and smelling the roses. So it's not really a developer problem, that's a gamer problem. It's a little bit of a developer problem, but it's overall a gamer problem. You want to burn through the content and then complain you're bored? Well, don't burn through the content then. Take the time to smell the roses, and you won't, and you might find you might actually enjoy the content more or longer, but that might be a whole nother episode in and of itself. Anyway, there's a limited amount of content that can be created in any game, based on your development cycle, the time you have to develop the game, and of course the funds that you have to use within that development time. You can have all the content you want, but your game might be in development for 10 years and be a non-entity by then. It'll turn into vaporware at that point. So at some point these games have to launch, so there's only a limited amount of content. So after it launches, the big thing is with a theme park game, you got to make sure you're in a position as a developer to able to provide more content at a regular pace to keep players interested and to keep them playing. So that's the thing with theme parks, whereas with the sandbox, that's not necessarily the case, because the players have all these tools in order to do different stuff with, or to create their own interests and do their own interesting things. Star Wars Galaxies had a lot of different professions and stuff, so you didn't necessarily even need to have missions to progress, and you could just be a dancer and provide buffs to players who were doing stuff. Minecraft the same way, SimCity, Stronghold the same way. There's a lot of different things that developers put in those games for you to keep entertained by building your own thing. Your free build modes, that kind of stuff. You can build your own scenarios. So that's what a sandbox is. It provides you all these tools in which to generate your own content. Now, some of it, like Neverwinter Nights and Star Trek Online, they actually have what they call the Forge, in which players can actually create their own scenarios, create their own missions. So that helps a lot. Those games are theme park games, but they have these elements that are very sandboxy and that aids the developer in having content for the game. It's player generated content, so that will keep players interested. More content that can be put out faster and sometimes even better than the developers themselves may be able to do. So, while a sandbox game, a pure sandbox game without any theme park elements, is going to be relegated niche, it will never be a good, or not good, but a big popular game. Likewise, a theme park game, pure theme park game, is not going to be able to produce enough content to maintain player interest over the long term without having pumping out, churning out content at a regular clip, like say Guild Wars 2 does at this point. Right now, ArenaNet put themselves in a position in order to be able to put out that content at regular clip. Now, whether you're a fan of the content they're putting out or not, sort of it's besides the point, because as we've said in previous episodes, gaming is a very personal thing. There are things you're going to like, there are things you're not going to like. So to say that, well, Guild Wars 2 doesn't matter what they're putting out, I don't like it, well, it doesn't matter. Then it's maybe that's not the game for you. Other people, however, do like that content, do consume it, and they're able to do that. So the best thing you can do is a hybrid, the Themepark, the Sandbox, so to speak. So which one is better, which one is worse? Well, I can only go on my own personal expectations, my own personal playstyle, my own personal opinion, and that would be mainly a theme park game with some sandbox elements, such as player housing, such as a crafting system, as long as that crafting system isn't too obtrusive or too necessary to my gameplay. As I mentioned in our crafting episode, go back and look at that. Me, crafting should be a side venture that isn't necessary to participate in the game, but it should be there to maintain player interest for those players that are interested in that type of activity. Same thing with player housing. It's not necessarily something I would enjoy overly or spend a lot of time doing. I'm more the player where I want my characters, whatever game it is, my characters going out there, completing the stories, completing the missions, whatever it is, actively doing something in the game instead of sitting at home, painting the walls or knitting a piece of cloth armor or whatever. That's not really, I sort of enjoy that stuff to a minimalist extent, but my meat and bones is the theme park, is the attractions, is the ride. That's why I go to the theme park. That's why I pay money for a theme park. I want that stuff. Bring it to me. Entertain me. I don't care if you're leading me by the nose. That's the stuff I enjoy. I've tried, sandbox games outside of the single player things like SimCity, even Minecraft. I haven't tried Minecraft, but Minecraft very much in that vein, Stronghold. Those type of games, those are the types of sandbox games that I enjoy. MMO-wise, I've tried them. I tried Star Wars Galaxies, just not my cup of tea. Because especially now, the way I am as a gamer, I just want to hop in. I want to get something accomplished in the time I have to play the game. And the theme park allows me to do that. The theme park allows me to progress by completing a mission, by completing a quest, that type of thing, by exploring a bit of the world and getting some XP or getting some gear for that exploration or rewards or whatever the game may have. To me, theme park, I can hop in, bang, accomplish something, enjoy the hour or two I have, and hop out. Sandbox game, not necessarily so, because you have all these tools that you've got to gather up. You got to make sure you have the right tools and this kind of stuff, and then it's more of a grindy, hardcore aspect, more of a time-consuming aspect of a theme park, generally speaking. Which, of course, me personally as a gamer, I just don't have the time to do that anymore. You gotta have the theme park. So, but again, the drawback to that is that you will eventually consume all the content. Now, again, personally speaking, me as a player, I'm an altaholic, so that's not as big of an issue because if I complete the content with one character, I'm more than happy to create another character and go through all the content again with that new character because it's a different class. So basically, all the MMOs I play now, I've got a ton of characters. Each one of the different professions. So I want to try the different professions, so I'll always end up creating a character of each main class, each profession, whatever it is, and playing through because each one can bring a little bit something different. It may all be the same content. I'm going through the same quests, the same missions, but each character can be played a little bit differently. I'm a little bit of a role player, so I create characters and they have their own special, Star Wars: The Old Republic is an example. I'll play each character. All the planetary missions are exactly the same, but I get a little bit of entertainment by playing the conversations a little bit differently based on what that character is. So a little bit of role play aspect to me, which keeps me entertained. But again, I'm an altaholic, and I have characters of every race, and I'll go through. I'm not bored by the same content. I'm not bored by grind. I did grind. I did the grind, for 20 years, from the 80s through the 90s through the double aughts. I did all that grind back in the day before the casual audience for gaming blew up and actually, made the gaming industry what it is today. It's not the hardcore, it's the casual that made the gaming industry what it is today, and why we see a lot more theme parks, a lot more casual oriented games out there now. That's why I enjoy. So it's quick, it's easy, pop in, pop out, and I can enjoy that content. I enjoy that content. So some people get bored doing the same thing over and over again. Well, I grew up doing it. I was there when it started, so it doesn't necessarily bore me. Do I enjoy it as much as I did back then? Not necessarily, which is why I like the theme parks. But a lot of the games now, I have that choice. Back in the games of old, that was what you had, no choice. That was all there was the grind. So, we dealt with it. We got over it. Now a lot of the games give you the choice. It's a choice to grind or not. So that's very nice about it, but that's a whole topic in and of itself. So what's good? How much is good? I guess that depends on you as a player. Taking Star Wars: The Old Republic as an example, very theme parky, just like the original Guild Wars, very theme parky, very linear. No player housing, no real in-depth crafting system as you have in some other games. No real mini games. Guild Wars added a few of them here and there, but not to any real extent. So what's the appeal? Why keep playing these games? Well, besides the fact they enjoy it, and if you're an altaholic like me, you can take different characters through, enjoy that content. But unfortunately, that's not going to sustain a theme park in the long run. My type of play style, my type of attitude towards these games is probably not the majority. So you're going to have a theme park, but you're going to have those elements, those sandbox type themes in those games. Now, that's not necessarily changing weather patterns or day-night cycles. That's not necessarily Sandbox. That's not what really Sandbox is. That's just atmospheric that can fit in any game. But again, if you're going to spend development time and resources on it, you've got to have some sort of payoff with it. So, with Star Wars: The Old Republic and Guild Wars as an example, you have very static worlds or zones. They have a theme. They paint you a picture, essentially, of what that zone is going to entail. It puts you in a certain mood. I kind of like that. For me, day-night cycles, weather patterns are really unnecessary, more obtrusive than anything, unless, of course, it changes how you interact with the content. But then again, you're getting more sandboxy. That's where you get into the sandbox type of thing, to where the different elements actually change the gameplay based on when you are playing. Which again, is not really my favorite type of thing, because I don't want to be dictated when I have to play a game. I want the choice of when to play and what content I'm going to experience to be my choice, not the developer's choice. So that's why I like these static worlds. I like the stuff where I can hop in whenever I want and not have to worry about, well, I can't do something because it's the wrong time of day in game, the weather's not correct in game, that type of stuff. So that's why, again, and another reason why I and many others, the casual type audience enjoys the theme park more is because we have the choice of when we're playing in our hands and we're not missing anything. Nothing is affected by that choice because, something else is going on in game that doesn't allow us to do what we want to at that particular point in time. But, that being said, it is necessary that you should have some sort of sandbox type elements in game. Now, Rift really hit it out of the park with their dimensions. Very sandboxy, very SimCity strongholdy type building that you can in your player instance. So that appeals to a lot of players. So the two biggie things really are player housing and a crafting system. Even though I might not necessarily use them, I understand the need for them to keep player interest. And of course, mini games would be another thing. Now, the type of mini games, of course, is going to depend on the game itself. Guild Wars has a few, trying to think now, besides their holiday themes. Especially in Eye of the North, they've got some repeatable content like Polymock. That type of thing. It's like a Pokemon game, which again I'm not a fan of, but it's something to keep player interest. Star Wars: The Old Republic really has nothing, so people in that game have been begging for stuff like Pazak, like Swoop Racing, some of these mini games, which overall, fine, go ahead. I'm happy for them to spend development time and resources to get some of these mini games in. Now, some other things like player housing or a more in-depth crafting system, not so much, because then that takes time, development resources away from the content that I want to enjoy, which is more missions, more flashpoints, more operations, that kind of stuff. So that's a thin line for any developer you have to really tread. And as a gamer, you have to realize what's in the game now. Okay, so Star Wars: The Old Republic, it launched without player housing. It launched without these main games. Now, the mini games, compared to an in-depth player housing system, is probably a little bit easier, less development resource times to get in there. So, same thing with Themepark. It's already there. This is what the game is. You either enjoy it as is, or you find something else that you can enjoy more. You have to be an adult about it and understand that not every game is going to appeal to you. Don't go and try to change the game to something you want because, unless nobody enjoys it, then that's different. But obviously, a lot of these games, a lot of people enjoy them as is. Star Wars: The Old Republic, one of the main things. Once now that it's gone free to play, more people can experience it. More people are enjoying it as is. Don't take time and development resources away from something that is not really necessary in the game at this point. You can put in some minor stuff, but you don't really need Star Wars Galaxy type player housing in Star Wars: The Old Republic. Simply not necessary. I mean, they can do a little bit of tweaking in there with the player ships that we have. That it's not part of the Galactic Starfire expansion. The original player ships that you got with the content, make that more or less, give more player customization to that. Is not such a big deal, but to implement some of the player housing that people may be asking for, a la sort of more along the lines of Dimensions, no, that is just a waste of time, resources, because that's not what the game is. That's not what people are really there in the game for. They're there to experience the storyline, the theme park elements. That's the way I look at it. I go to a theme park, I pay my money to a theme park to be entertained by the rides and the attractions. I don't go there to decorate the parking spot where my car is sitting. And that's essentially what people are looking for. They're looking for in a theme park, hey, I'm going to pay money to a theme park, but I'm just going to stand out there and decorate the parking spot. The theme park may spend money and time to provide, the sidewalk chalk, the paints, whatever it is you want to build around the park. No, don't waste that time and money providing stuff to pre up the parking lot. create another ride, add another attraction. That's what a theme park is about. So that's something gamers have to understand. A theme park is a theme park. Now, if the developers want to create some of those sandbox elements right from the get-go, that's fine. Spend the time and money before the game is released. Afterwards, not so much, because if people are enjoying the content as is, then that's the content that must be the main focus of the game. So, the best thing to do as a developer is to create your theme box or sand park right from the get-go. You're not going to really sustain a lot of people pure theme park. So have your housing system ready, have your crafting system ready, have your mini games ready from the get-go. Yes, spend the time, spend the development money, even if it adds a year to development. It's better to do it then and then afterwards. It's really not that wise to do it afterwards. So, what kind of elements are good? Well, I just mentioned that's basically it. Player housing and the crafting system. I think, personally speaking, in a theme park game, that's really all you need, because the bulk of the content should be more rides, should be more attractions, a la missions, areas to explore, that type of thing. And again, your mini games. Those are the three main elements I think that we really need to see these AAA theme park games that are coming out. And of course, get rid of the subscription. Don't bother with the subscription. If you want one, have a freemium. At the very least, launch freemium. It shouldn't go like ESO's going, pure subscription based from the outset. That's just a recipe for a disaster, especially if, like ESO, you're primarily a theme park game. So add your player housing. It doesn't have to be that in-depth, but something to keep the other people entertained that may get bored with the theme park style of game. Which, if you're bored with theme park style of game, why are you playing it to begin with? I don't know, but whatever. We'll throw you a bone, so to speak. But that's, basically, get that stuff out of the gate, and then have your rides and your attractions as your meat and bones, and then this stuff on the side, just like Venus Rising. The main meat and bones is going to be the character progression, going to be the missions, going to be that kind of stuff with the three classes, and one of the big Sandparky features is going to be the sexual interactions your characters can have. It's a side feature. Housing should be a side feature. The crafting should be a side feature. The mini games should be a side feature. All three of those should be the side features of the theme park, not necessary to participate in order to progress and advance through the content, but something to do when you need a break from the main meat and bone stuff. That I don't have a problem with. That, I think, if we see more of that stuff in games, I think we will see a better reception and better games overall that are launching AAA MMOs. Now, ESO, they've got that a little bit. It looks like the crafting system is going to be pretty good, but they're still making the usual missteps that have been misstepped, that have been made by developers for years at this point. So, remains to see how long they will last. But that's it. Theme parks versus sandboxes. Well, as we can see, there's no real winner, but there are improvements to be made. So until next time, thank you for watching. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment in the sections below. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer sandboxes? Do you prefer theme parks? What would you like to see as the hybrid? Leave a comment below. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out our Twitch channel. Lots of good stuff coming up on that too. Lots of good stuff we've already had. Thanks for watching. I guess we'll just call this an episode. Coming up hopefully before the end of the year. If you're watching this before the end of the year, we'll have one more episode in which I'll maybe talk a bit about my favorite top 5 games of all time, which you can actually take a look at that top 5 list, so to speak, on our RMG Gaming webpage. It's www.realmillenniumgroup.com. If you go to the main page, there's actually a banner right there at top that says RMG Gaming. click that and you can get into our gaming page and see our list of top 5 games and top 5 arcade games too. We might even mention that, and hopefully in the future episodes on the wrist I can get my hands on some of those arcade games and be able to get them all. It's in the wrist, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time as I rumble on, I will see you in game. Happy holidays. Enjoy.